Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we gather today and pay respects to their elders past and present. My connection to this country comes through my father. My grandfather's country is from Cape York and my grandmother is from the Torres Straits. Our work at the Cape York Institute focuses on empowerment. We try to work the principle of individual and community empowerment and individual and community responsibility into everything that we do. In thinking about constitution reform, it is important to remember that the Indigenous right to take back responsibility for our lives is the same as the Indigenous right to be treated equally, to live without racism, and to be an equal citizen. It is the Indigenous right to be free and to be in control of our own destinies. As we all know, Indigenous Australians have not often been afforded these basic rights in the past. The right to liberty and equality. The right to make our own choices. In the past, we were severely discriminated against. We were denied the basic freedoms enjoyed by other Australians. Historically, we were treated like an inferior race, incapable of making our own decisions. This history informs what we are trying to do with constitution recognition. I would say that there are two reasons why constitution recognition is important. There are two problems we're trying to solve. The first is the racial discrimination problem. Our constitution, as Henrietta mentioned, still contains remnant racial discrimination, a reminder of the unjust attitudes under which our people suffered. One clause talks about banning its citizens from voting. Another clause gives the Commonwealth the power to pass racially discriminatory laws. Australia's constitution not only explicitly allows racial discrimination, arguably, it promotes it. We profess to be a liberal, democratic nation, yet ours is the only constitution in the world that I know of that gives its parliament explicit power to racially discriminate against its citizens and to talk about preventing its citizens from voting based on race. Our constitution contains a serious undemocratic error with respect to race. Our Indigenous people have suffered because of that. We have been excluded from the nation because of our race. The racial discriminatory attitudes against us were so ingrained that they actually denied we even existed, that we were human beings. That was called terra nullius. We were considered as an inferior, so-called race, undeserving of legal and political recognition. That's the second problem we're trying to solve, is our recognition, our non-recognition. The Constitution is our founding national document. It is the document that unified the colonies into a single federation. Yet our birth certificate document makes no mention of the fact that people were here before the British ships arrived. Ironically, after the 1967 referendum, after the exclusions of Indigenous people was deleted from the Constitution, we now have a founding document that makes no mention of us whatsoever. It reads as if terra nullius is still good law. Yet Mabo exposed terra nullius as a fallacy in the early 90s. So there are two things we're trying to fix. We need to formally recognise the Indigenous history and heritage of our nation. This land was not empty before the British ships arrived. This truth should be stated in our founding national document. And we need to remove the remnant racial discrimination of the Constitution. The national conversation is now underway to try and reach an agreement on the right package of reforms. As this process continues, we at Cape York Institute are aware of this great opportunity that is present here. This could be a package of reforms which symbolically and practically reinstate the Indigenous right to take back our responsibility to empower Indigenous people. But we need to get this right. This reform needs to be meaningful. Symbolism is important, but this is absolutely about practical change. It is about moving away from racial discrimination of the past. I echo the words of Noel Pearson and wholeheartedly agree with them when he said, "This reform needs to be the promise that comes after sorry. The promise from the nation to Indigenous people to do things in a better way." Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, put your hands together please for Fiona Jose. Thank you very much. CEO of Cape York Institute for Policy and Leadership. And powerful words at that.